When I began studying Second Life about 2006, I was most inspired by postmodern, post-feminist, cyborg theories about human identity and the relationship between humanity and technology. Particular writers like Donna Haraway, Sherry Turkle. I read books like Zero and One, Cyborg Manifesto. These ideals were that the internet and a cyborg identity, a relationship, a human being born out of a kind of singularity merging of man, woman to machine, could transcend the binaries that define our culture, open up a possibility of assuming multiple identities, entering into a kind of rhizomatic self in which the body without parts disintegrates and one becomes a multiple stream of identities that one sutures onto very quickly. And this was a theory that I was looking to prove. This is how I actually saw Second Life when Second Life first came out. When I first started using it heavily. Just to say is that what I've learned through 4 years of watching Second Life and other related identity-based technologies like social networks and such is that I really don't think that these ideals account for the current state of human need or human desire, that actually, as of right now, people still have a strong need for a unity of identity. Some people may actually form that unified identity in a virtual being. Most people in the West actually just use the technology to extend their own identity. But I think the evidence is pointing to me that there's a need for a completeness of identity. And what I find now is that I'm looking more at Lacan and the Freudian theorists of identity. And I keep coming back, oddly enough, and I never would have thought this. I mean, if you had told me 2 years ago that I'd be rereading Jung, that I'd ever be rereading Jung, I had dismissed him as a joke years ago. But his ideals, and also Maslow's ideals, that we are looking for integration of our identity, that we're seeking to go from these disparate experiences and create a unified self. And I'm going back and looking at some of the great artists who've written things about identity, particularly Proust, the French writer, who's very, very difficult. But stopping to think about how so much of our effort is in forming a self, a unified, whole, complete self, a la Jung's theory, a la Maslow's theory. Now, the postmodernist theorists all saw this as being imposed by the social order, and it may be true. I can't tell you that people are trying to form a singular, coherent, consistent identity because it's biologically based or it's social based. I don't know, but I can tell you what I see in technologies. I don't see the kind of cyborg revolution I was expecting. I don't see people transforming themselves into different kinds of personalities very, very quickly. What I see is people trying to evolve a coherent, unified identity of themselves. And that is really how, particularly Second Life, but also working more with other social networks, has transformed my thinking about sociology and brought me to sort of question some of these more radical assumptions of postmodernism and post-feminism, and kind of go back to the classics, theorists, of people like Weber, Marx, and Freud, Lacan, to re-examine the psychoanalysts, to look back at Maslow, and to start really thinking about human beings as seeking in their technology, seeking in their art, a coherency and consistency of identity. And that's really what people are trying to get out of something like Second Life. And I really think that rather than taking on lots and lots of different puppet identities, what people are really trying to do in Second Life is often work through issues and fine-tune identities. People who have certain particular crises in their life will enter into the Second Life kind of fantasy space and try to fine-tune and perfect their identities to alleviate the stresses they're having in real life. And definitely looking way more at trying to understand Second Life in terms of fantasy and Freudian, Lacanian psychoanalytic theory rather than postmodern cyborg theory. So Second Life has pushed me back 30 years in the academic tradition, and I don't want to disrespect. I still love the postmodernist theories. I think Donna Haraway's ideals are brilliant. I think the Cyborg Manifesto is brilliant, but it is not exactly what I think is guiding me right now.